Is this what day is this?
It's Mail It In Friday.
Yeah, well, the due to binds.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. What a day in the city of Toronto. What a day. How are we feeling?
Feeding the beast. We're feeding the beast, which is Bryan Hayes. Hazy, let's not beat around the bush. Why don't you give a quick recap and then entertain your thoughts?
Oh, there's a lot of thoughts.
We all have thoughts.
Everyone's got thoughts, right? Not surprised at all that there was an announcement today. It's been a week since they last played a game. They've been out for a week. Like standard practice in pro sports is maybe let the dust settle a little bit, and then something happens.
Right.
I can't say I was sitting here bracing for Dubas on his own to be the one out. Now, he wasn't fired because his contract was about to expire.
They couldn't get it. They didn't get a new deal done. They agreed
didn't get
to
a new
part
deal
ways.
done. Exactly. It wasn't like, this isn't a bombshell out of nowhere he got fired. Everyone knew his deal was up, and I guess it was in limbo. And the news came out earlier this afternoon. They're moving on from Dubas and Dubas alone. Now, that surprises me on a couple of different levels.
Yep.
And we'll get into all of this. The fact that they don't have an immediate replacement speaks to what has happened this week. The fact that Sheldon Keefe is still the head coach, I find quite strange. But, we'll see where that goes. Yet, Brendan Shanahan just spoke an hour ago. And for an organization that generally keeps everything close to the vest, we have seen two bombshell press conferences this week that will likely go down in Maple Leaf history. Beginning Monday with Dubas, where I think he went off script. I think he started speaking about things that clearly caught a lot of the Maple Leaf, executives off base, including Brendan Shanahan.
Let's call that the beginning of the end.
That was the beginning of the end. But then also this afternoon, Shanahan detailed extensively what went down this week.
I thought that was an unbelievable presser.
Before this week. This went back to last offseason, and then the different chats, and then the agent getting involved. That is really very rare. It was not something I was expecting, and I have an appreciation for it because everyone's an adult. The fans want to know. They're uneasy on what's going on here, and I think Shanahan basically laid it all out. There was a lot of detail in terms of what happened between Shanahan and Dubas.
Yeah. I think he played it. I think Dubas tried to play his hand, and Shanny finally said, "It's enough. Get out. This is about money." And that the most revealing thing was I'll come back, but then there's we need more money to do that. I thought Monday it was about your family, but now there's money involved, and believe me, it is about your family. Don't get me wrong, but it came back down. And I thought Chris Johnson, I think he asked the first question: "Is this about finances?" And really. The fact that they come back and say, "Yeah, we'll accept it, but we need more." Finally, Shanny looked like he was like, "That's it, I'm done." I don't know. You guys
that's
tell me.
There's just a level of uncertainty there where it was I want to be the GM, and then I need to talk to the family, and then let's talk about a different financial package. And I'm just guessing, but what it kind of looks like is. It looks like somebody that might have something else cooking somewhere else where it's I'm going to see what I can manage with this, and if not, I don't know. That's just the sense I get. How does it go sideways like that? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I want your opinion on this, Brian. That was the biggest bombshell from that whole press conference for me, is that he agreed, but there was another offer, well, we need this, though. Another...
Right. Well, he didn't agree to the terms. What he did was send an email to Shanahan last night saying, "Okay, I'm willing to stick around. You'll hear from my agent." And then, according to Shanahan, again, this is from the horse's mouth.
Right.
Which, again, makes this such almost a jaw-dropping press conference. The fact that Shanahan, who you never see, never hear... This franchise is terrified of letting news out, He just revealed everything. And again, I have a great appreciation for that honesty, and I'd like to see that more. I'm not expecting it more, but this is a massive shift in the organization, right? And I'm not speaking about, me, the guy who's coming on the air to talk about it. I'm talking fans. We're coming across fans all the time. Like, what's going on? What are they going to do? What's happening? And the fans, I believe, deserve to know. Now, I wasn't expecting that much detail, but he handed that out. And I think there's a few different things that need to be addressed here. First and foremost, I do think what is important, putting all of the detail aside, this time last week, there was one guy for the job, according to Brendan Shanahan. And that guy is no longer available because he just showed him the door. Right. That is, I think, concerning that they don't have a plan B or a plan C or a plan D. And I'm a bit surprised by that. It didn't sound as if Shanahan was indicating this. He's taken the whole season here to think of alternatives. Basically, he began thinking of an alternative on Monday afternoon. So who's coming in next? Who's available? What kind of marching orders are they going to have? I don't think that's certainly not a positive, that it feels as if they were putting all their eggs into the Dubas basket.
Yeah.
But with that said, what I appreciate and what I think needs to happen here, and I'm hopeful from a Maple Leaf standpoint, what Shanahan has established today is two things that need to be pillars for this organization. I think we've been talking about it all week. And the next step of this is to apply it to the players. Prove you want to be here and don't take advantage of us. Prove you want to be here and don't take advantage of the situation.
Well, how are a couple of them going to do that, Brian? How are they going to start saying, prove you want to be here? Are you saying don't ask for the world and don't take the organization hostage to start?
Yes. First and
foremost. Paraphrasing, but yes. Yeah.
I think what happened here is with Dubas, using Dubas as the example. On Monday, Shanahan clearly walked away with questions as to whether he wanted to be here anymore. And that is concerning. Regardless of how callous that might feel, cutthroat it might be in business, if you're the boss, you got to make sure everyone's pot committed. And regardless of the reasoning for it, if Shanahan walked away from that presser on Monday saying, I don't know if this guy's in it or if this guy wants to be here, that's a concern. And then on top of it is, okay, you want to be here, but you need more money. You want more money or you want more power, you want more whatever, which he's entitled to ask for. Let's clarify that.
As soon as that first element entered your brain, I would cut, that's when it would be over for me. If I got the sense, I'm sure you, Hayes, you run the operation here. If you got the sense me or Noodles didn't want to have anything to do with it, you would say, just see you later. We got a show to do.
Right.
You know
what I mean? It's too tough to work.
No kidding.
There's too much pressure. There's too much stuff on the line. Right. And again, I think how that might apply to the players is you treat everyone with respect. I'm not saying disrespect anybody. Of course not. But do you want to be here? And if so, don't take advantage of us because of the media and the fans and all the losing and all that kind of stuff. Right. I think that's what needs to happen here. And I think it's imperative the next GM has that marching order, is treat player X the same way he would be treated in Colorado or Tampa or Carolina or Minnesota. Don't just say, all right, because it's Toronto, I get it. It's a fishbowl. It's tough. Here's an extra $2 million because it's tough. They got to stop that. That's what jammed them up 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And they've been digging themselves out ever since. And the players are great players, great individual players. But they rolled over for those guys. And I think now you got a situation here where Shanahan, I think, presented this with Dubas, and he decided he either didn't really want to be here or he wanted to take advantage of whatever situation it was, and he decided to cut bait.
And look, guys, big picture, we're talking about Kyle. He's a friend of mine. He's a good guy. He's a good hockey guy.
Yes,
At the end of the day, guys, we're talking 6-7 years. We'll call it 3 or 4 with a quality team with expectations to win, and they won one playoff round. So nobody should be surprised that things are going to look different and a different set of eyes are going to be on this. That's kind of what happens. And I'm somewhat surprised, and people should be too, in a market like this. It could have happened earlier. So it's not like it's shocking news in this development today. Do you guys not agree?
I agree. And you know what? This isn't the run over Kyle Dubas show.
No.
We're just speaking our truth. Like, listen, Kyle's been good to us. He's a good guy. I'm sure he'll land on his feet. But in this situation, I think mistakes were made. We're going to talk about that. But you're right, This could have happened last year when they lost to Tampa. Shanny go, you know what? You staked your career on these guys. Like, we're gonna move away from this situation. We're gonna try something different.
Yeah.
They tried at the deadline, and you know what? They ended up getting a round out of it. But that's it. But if you look at the body of the work, is the organization better today? Yes, from a regular season standpoint, absolutely. And is the culture and inclusive and all of the things that come with the Maple Leafs organization's first class. But we're in the NHL is the winning business. This isn't the feel good business and all that. I say this all the time. Yankees, Red Sox, Cowboys, Manchester United, if they had a run like that, I'm sure there would have been change at some point.
And you can dig through the micro and go through every individual like people on Twitter do, saying Nazem Kadri transaction, and it goes on with Kerfoot and this and that. But no, that's the macro. Anyway, the big picture is it's one round.
Yep. Right, and everyone's going to make a mistake. Like the next GM's going to make mistakes.
Of course, but at the end of the day, it's one round in a bunch of years.
But here's a couple things on that. Again, cannot forget, even with all that said, that was not the intention of Shanahan. Shanahan just said he was planning on extending this guy. If Kyle Dubas last week said, I'm in, I'll take the deal, guess who's the GM today? So Shanahan did not get rid of him because of the job he did. He got rid of him because he either didn't think he was committed or he asked for too much, or whatever the details
combination
were.
of that.
Yes, exactly. This was not Dubas leaving because Shanahan didn't think it was good enough. So it's a very different context, and that's what puts Shanahan in the forefront here, right?
Oh,
this guy's been here for 9 years. This will be his fourth GM. He's won one round. Yes, Dubas is the GM, and prior to that it was Lou, and it was known as when Shanahan got here. It's time for Brendan Shanahan to take the accountability on that too, right? Because the same thing could have applied. If you're going to say, well, change could happen in Manchester United, you think Shanahan's sticking around? No. He's lucky he's here too. So he's getting another kick at the can. He's getting another kick at the can. This will be his fourth GM, one playoff win, 9 years.
You're right.
Time for him to get something done here.
But usually, like I say, there is change. I think he stood by Kyle, gave him his start, gave him his opportunity. And don't you think, let's dial this back into a human level. This guy has given Kyle Dubas his start, gave him an opportunity, and then Kyle Dubas this week goes, you know what? It's my right. It's been hard on my family, all of that. We all thought that Monday's presser was honest, and we all
it was an emotional presser.
It was an emotional presser.
Yep.
But then come Thursday, it's like, well, you know what? Do it, but let's add some more money on top here, where I'm sure, I don't know the numbers, but I'm sure it wasn't scratch. It was some big numbers. And
that's why, Jamie, I thought...
That's the one that smells for me. That's the one that smells for me.
And that's why it kind of smelled like to me, where it's like, if you've got something floating out there, and I don't know, like... That's when you play the game. Hey, how about this amount? Because
like he's got another deal on the table. For
who
knows?
Team. Like I'm pretty sure you don't just make up a number and say, "Hey, what about that?" and you just toss it out there at the last second. Well, who does that?
Yeah, I hear you. And he opened the door for Shanahan to start thinking about the organization under the guise of someone else, right?
Well,
that's what Shanahan expressed an hour ago. Started
but he
thinking
also,
about it differently.
But Shanahan also said, we got an opportunity. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, he said this could have been done before the playoffs. Like, they talked about it. Like, there were points throughout the season that this could have been done. It wasn't done. So is that Kyle Dubas going, I'm going to wait and believe I have as much leverage as possible? Hopefully we go to the Cup. Hopefully, fine, no problem. But you end up in the second round and you go out in 5. Now, all of a sudden, you start playing some hands here, and I don't know if finally it looked to me like Shanny's like, if this guy's not all in, and you're out. That's it. It's
okay.
Enough. We'll find somebody else.
That logic better start applying to the players, because I wouldn't be shocked if Dubas said, well, he rolled over for Willie and Austin and Mitch, so maybe it's my turn now. I'm gonna do it. And when those guys wanted whatever they wanted, they got whatever they wanted. And here, where there's no salary cap, and if this is the guy you really believe is the guy for the job, it better not have been dollars and cents, right? It better be deeper than that. And I'm sure it is, and the details are only going to go so far. Again, I appreciate the candor from Shanahan. I'd like to see it more. I find it a little bit interesting that now the details are coming out to kind of spin the story against Kyle, right? To make now, like, details never come out of this organization. Now, we know when an agent called. Like, we haven't heard anything from this team in 9 years. And now we know when.
Are you just surprised
called.
You heard details today?
Yes, I'm shocked. And again,
Shockness, some level of shockness. There's a lot. There's
a lot of shockness. Shockness meter is going nuclear right now. Nuclear. Yes. I'll create a new word for that.
But you're right.
But details never come out of this team. And now Shanahan's here breaking down what he had for breakfast with Dubas 2 weeks ago.
Well,
I'd like to see that remain consistent, but I'm willing to put money on it that it won't.
I give him full credit for that because at least we got a window into how this all unfolded.
I love it.
But that being said, there was two things. There's lots of work to be done here for the next 5-6 weeks.
Still, you're right about that.
But I like Shanahan. Like, he stopped short and said there's 500 people that work at this organization. We'll be fine for the next little bit. Like, he basically stopped short of saying that, but I took that for that.
And he referenced a couple of Dubas's guys, right? He referenced Pridham, and Pridham's name's been out there a lot. Could Pridham be looking elsewhere, or could people be knocking in his door for vacancies around the league? He specifically mentioned Pridham, who has been lockstep with Dubas since day one, and he mentioned Wes Clark, who goes way back with Kyle, like way back. They are very close, and Wes runs the scouting department, and he referenced Wes because he's going to run the draft.
Right.
So you're right. Like that, Shanahan now has to get to his people, which he said he was, and let everyone know Rome is not burning here, and you got a really important 6 weeks, 2 months, and it should be a very coveted job. You've got a team that goes to the playoffs every year, high-end talent, a huge market, owners that are going to give you a blank check to do whatever you see fit. You're going to make money, and if you win here, you're going to be a king. That's pretty compelling. But who's it going to be, and how quickly can you get people in and get the hiring process going? Because, again, this time last week, it doesn't sound like Shanahan was even thinking about a plan B.
Mm-hmm. Man, you've said that a lot, Hayes. You've said that since it just seems like a lot. We've heard it a lot. I think Berkey said it back in the day. You win, you get your name on a school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Win, you're the king of the county.
It's been a long time.
Well,
man.
we've said it since we've been on this show.
Sales pitch, but it still
and
applies.
It's true, and it's still true.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is Shanahan, I like the fact that he was very transparent, because if he wasn't today, all it does is lead to speculation. To me, it like the fact that he laid out a timeline, did everything, because if he didn't, it would just be, whatever leaks out through insiders and online stuff, as opposed to like, this is what happened from our side. Kyle might have a different story, but I personally, again, this is dumbing it down. I feel like Kyle may have overplayed his hand here from leverage, and Brendan said that's too much.
To be fair to Kyle, like, he'll probably speak at some point, and maybe he will express himself, maybe he won't. Right. Who knows? But that very well could be the case, and that's kind of how Shanahan detailed it. Like, they were going back and forth. They felt like a deal was going to happen, and then the press conference caught Shanahan off guard because Dubas had never brought up any of those issues to him. And then waiting, an email from Kyle saying, okay, I'm willing to come back. Agent comes back over the top with a new deal, and all of a sudden that changes things. And if you do that, you are risking the party you're working for possibly just cutting bait. Right. But listen, the guy that Shanahan thought was right for the job is no longer available. So now he's got to change his mind on that in terms of the program, right?
Right.
In terms of who's going to build the program and who's going to take this team and where they're going to take it. This is the nature of sports, is when there are firings, they happen after the season, and the new season's right around the corner, right? It's every market's the same. You fire a guy right after the season's over, and you got to jump on a moving train.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen here.
Well, and everything that was on the table, like Kyle came back and said, everything's on the table as far as look at what Florida did last year. And, so he kind of alluded that there was going to be some change from, the inner core. And that was asked. Obviously, Shanny can't answer that question right now because he doesn't know who his manager is going to be. But that philosophy, I think there is going to be change. I don't think it has to be major change, but I do believe there has to be a shift. And here's the other thing that I would ask both of you. Do you think that there may be, and I don't mind this in management groups, you do need differing philosophies. But maybe it was a scenario at the trade deadline where Shanny was like, you need to be more gritty. You need to do this. And maybe there was a disconnect with something with that, too.
Wouldn't be shocking if autonomy factored in.
The word autonomy has been thrown out there, correct? Right?
For sure.
So that is something that if there was a difference in philosophy in the way you build your team or you want the product on the ice, maybe that it was in the back of his mind too, saying, okay, I'll head in a different direction after this week's events.
Right. Well, exactly. And there's very likely more details between the Shanahan-Dubas conversations that were not revealed.
Oh, and they never will be.
And they never will, nor do they have to be. I understand. No one expects a full transparency of everything that's happening behind the scenes. Totally understandable. But what I mean by that is there may have been a disconnect with what has to happen here moving forward.
Right.
Whether it's the coach, the players, if you trade a player, which one that is, what you would expect to come back, what you feel you need to address. And again, the timeline is quite interesting for me because when Shanahan anointed Dubas and pushed Lou aside, it was on the verge of working out 3 massive contracts that have had a huge ripple effect on everything within this organization.
Yeah.
Nylander, Matthews, Marner. Guess what? We're on the verge of happening again. Willie and Austin can sign this summer. Mitch can sign next summer. And I think if you look back on it, Shanahan, I'm sure, has to regret the way those played out. Not that he doesn't love the players. Not that the players haven't pulled their weight in the regular season.
The business of that.
The business side of it. Sure. And he allowed a rookie GM to take on more than he could chew. And Shanahan was in those rooms too, and he's got to own it as well. But now, does he try to bring in a different voice and a different approach with those contracts moving forward? We'll see.
Yeah.
It was quite something. Yeah, it was quite something. We'll play some of the audio from Brendan Shanahan. We've got some of his more interesting comments from earlier today.
We have to play audio today for sure. And react to it. That's what it is. Because I was on the edge of my seat.
I couldn't believe the full details.
I was like,
6 o'clock. Here's what we'll do. 6 o'clock. No, I'm not. I'm being serious.
Okay.
We play the presser and we react.
Well, we have Dregs coming up. We got Dear Hazy B. We got a lot of things going on. We got your boy John Forslund coming up. He was calling into 4th overtime.
He should be still sleeping right now.
What was his my brain? You guys know where I go at when I'm tired. If I do OverDrive panel, my last comment of the evening, it is hit or miss whether I just fall flat in my face on that panel. Because your brain's fried. I can't imagine. You put me in that booth in 4 overtimes. Like Betty at 9 o'clock. No way.
That was wild last night, man.
You would have been Pete Rose. That's what he would have been asleep on the panel.
Remember Pete? How tired Pete? He was falling asleep at the World Series in a bow tie.
Dude, I remember you texting me that pic and you said Pete Rose is asleep on the panel right now.
Yeah, that was extra innings.
I watched the game last night.
Troublesome.
I stayed up.
You stayed up for the whole thing?
I did.
Absurd.
I will be on. I will full disclosure because I was texting with Frankie, who was in.
Wasn't it 2:40 in the morning?
It was no. No, it was 2 a.m. It was just before 2. But I will admit, one of the intermissions, I had my computer because I was watching on my computer. I fell asleep and woke up, and there was 17 minutes left. So I slept the intermission and then 3 minutes into the third overtime.
I had a similar experience. I didn't stay up. I had it on, and I was in bed. I fell asleep at the beginning of the second overtime.
Yeah.
And then I heard the winner. I hear Cuthbert just yelling Kachuk. I'm like, am I dreaming this? And then I fell back asleep, and I woke up the next day. I'm like, oh, Kachuk did score. And you know when you feel like you just fell asleep? I thought I was asleep for 5 minutes. I'd been asleep for 2 hours. And somehow it was still going, and Kachuk ends up with the winner. So more on that later this hour. We got Mike Johnson on today, Dregs on today, Dear Hazy B. We'll get more into the Shanahan presser, the legacy of Dubas, and what happens moving forward. I want you guys to answer maybe how the players are reacting to news like this as well. We'll do that next.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Our boy Corey Connor's trying to steal the show down at Oak Hill. He's currently in the lead. Man, he looks good out there.
What's he at right now?
He does look good.
He's got
it. You know when he's got to look good, though, Hazy? Tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow and Sunday, because it's a whole different animal.
Well,
It
who
sure
was
is.
it?
What's the number? Leaders at what?
Well, he's at 5 under. Here's the thing. Pendrith is 1 under. Svensson 1 under. There's 3 Canadians in the top 6 right now. So there's a lot of Canadian content. And you're right, moving day tomorrow. You got Scheffler right on his heels.
There's
Hovland.
carnage out
Wow.
there.
And how about our buddy Tom Kim?
That was gross last night. Tom Kim went for a
Dude, he
mud
was
bath.
rolling around like a piglet in the mud. I don't know what he was doing out there.
Even he was laughing in his post-game or round presser.
But I think he
dying.
crawled back into it to clean off. He just said, "Screw it, I'm going
Yeah.
in. I'm diving
Wow.
Yeah, the pig man.
But there's a pig man on the course, and then
in."
there's a guy rolling around.
This guy's a professional golfer right now.
Do you know how gross you would feel? And
Oh,
the worst
my
part is he was in there looking for his golf
He
ball.
didn't
He didn't even
find
find it.
Yeah,
So,
and Hazy, I know how you are, and I know you like to look good and kind of feel good on the golf. If that was you, you're in your car and home.
oh, yeah. I'm trunk slamming and
Yeah.
double bird to Oak Hill on the way out. I'd
Yeah.
be so
No, but I think you're out of there, even if you're at Coppenwood and you're playing with Tux.
Of course.
If you fell around and were rolling in the mud like a little piglet, you would just say, "Guys, I'm out."
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not arguing with you on that. If I looked like that, if I fell in the mud, I'd be out. I'd be so mad.
Yeah,
I'd be out
because
of
you
there.
know that one of your playing partners, that pic goes on Instagram of you being a greasy
Yes.
little pig, and
Oh, for
it's
sure.
everywhere.
Right, especially if it's Tucker. He's got a lot of followers, and then I'm going to get. If it's one of the other guys, whatever.
Yeah.
But all right, I want to play the Shanahan clip about the details of like Dubas's agent and the back and forth. A lot of people have been writing in saying, "Hey, we missed it earlier. Can you play it?"
Okay.
There's pretty significant detail in terms of everything that appears to have broken down here between Dubas, Shanahan, the Leafs. So this was Brendan Shanahan about an hour ago, just over an hour ago, detailing what happened between himself and Dubas and what led to the Leafs moving on from Kyle Dubas.
Kyle had said that his agent was going to call me and that he would reach out to me as well. I got a call in the afternoon from his agent, and basically a new financial package was presented to me by the agent. The conversation was brief. I did not hear from Kyle throughout the day, and I went home, and just before dinner time I got an email from Kyle saying that he did want to be the general manager of the Maple Leafs. At that point, I have to, if I'm being honest, I had gotten to a different place about how I felt about the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs and what was best. And as hard as it was, and as hard as it is to make a significant change to somebody that you're close to and that you've been working with for 9 years, even though I was presented with, a gap had risen within the contract status, and but nevertheless, the email that I received from Kyle, I just felt differently, and I felt that the long-term future of the Maple Leafs might have to change, and slept on that, and woke up this morning, drove to Kyle's office at Ford Performance Center, and informed him that we were not going to be renewing his contract.
Guys, you guys know that I'm not like a brain surgeon. But what I got out of that was when the new financial package is presented, the following comment was the conversation was brief. A number was brought to his attention, and it was no way.
Yeah.
Do you not take away from that? The new financial package was presented, and then the conversation was brief.
Well, I also, what I think that the detail that stood out to me was not as much about that as Kyle's email is what changed it. And I wonder if what happened here is Shanahan felt like he was being disrespected, or he felt like Dubas wasn't being professional in all this. Now, because, again, he's referenced, they've worked together for 9 years. Shanahan offered Dubas the world. Right. Now, Dubas had to work for it. Dubas did the job. Dubas did not slack. Dubas was passionate. He put his heart on the line for this team. No question. He put the work in. No disputing that.
Yep.
But he came out of effectively nowhere. Shanahan put his neck out for him, gave him the first job, then pushed Lou Lamoriello out of the side.
Yeah.
A guy in the Hall of Fame. He said, go stand over there. Kyle's got the job. And then on top of that, he told Mike Babcock, you're out, for Dubas's guy, Sheldon Keefe. And then when all is said and done and it's time to get something done, Kyle sent an email to him.
Yeah.
That's
agree.
kind of how money. I read it. Was almost and wanted money, of course, and that factors in.
Like that's the thing that bothers me in all of this is that if the financial terms were, kind of going back and forth, it's only natural the last final push in a negotiation is like, can you do a little extra?
Right, of course.
That didn't sound like that was, can you round up a number? That sounded like that. He said there became a financial gap. Like that's asking, again, I don't know, but that's adding $1 million or $2 million on top of what you're already, potentially in that ballpark. Again, I'm speculating, but that from him, from what I got from Brendan Shanahan, he said the financial package, a gap had arisen.
Right.
That's not $100,000. Like that's a big gap.
No kidding. It's some key words. A new financial package, conversation brief. That's all you need to know.
And the other thing too is you're right. Like we're in the world. Yes, emails, texts, and stuff. These guys are friends and have worked together for 9 years. You can't sit down and have a face-to-face, and I get agents get involved. That's the business of this. Brendan Shanahan,
Jamie, if you were gonna tell me that you wanted to be the GM of OverDrive or something similar, you would be in my driveway. Well, you know what I mean? You would be at my house.
The three of us, how we conduct business, yes, it's a lot different, but you're right. Like we talk. Like we have a rapport. Yes, we're like brothers, so we argue and we do whatever.
But when Hayes butchered the shows a couple years ago, he was awful. He was off. I went to his house.
Yes, I remember that. And I locked you out. I told you to leave.
Showed up at his driveway. No, but it just, I get this is a business transaction and we've got to remove emotion from it. But two things, Hayes, you pointed it out. As of Monday morning, Kyle Dubas was going to be the manager, right? All eggs in that basket. Right. Kyle Dubas. And then Kyle takes it a different way. I don't know if that's negotiation or just his emotion goes, I've got to lay this out here that my family's affected. Right. I like you. Brendan's even said it. He said, I respect that. But he also goes, guess who else is everyone's family's affected here?
Of course that's going to happen. But I think that's important to point out, though. Again, Dubas is not here because he didn't do the job Shanahan thought he was supposed to do. Or not here because Shanahan didn't think Dubas could build a Stanley Cup winner. This appears to be a breakdown between their relationship and a breakdown in negotiations. And that begs the question, who's going to come in? Yeah. And is this a stable ship right now? Right?
And Hayes, I'd just like to point out one more thing before we get to what's going to happen next, and regardless of where the ship is at. People do have to understand, and this is the same as in hockey and in life and everything. We're only hearing one side of the story, so people do need to keep that in mind, okay?
Yeah, and that's true.
There is two people involved here, and we're hearing Brendan Shanahan's side of the story.
Exactly. So, his side of the story that fits for him and him detailing that.
And you can never make proper assessments on anything, I don't believe, until you hear from both sides of the story.
And then, you know what? When you hear both sides of the story, maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle because they both have put
I
their
just wanted
spin
to
on
make
it,
that
right?
note that we've heard one side of the story today, and we are reacting to that, and we're talking about that. But there is two. Let's not forget
That's
that.
fair.
Right, of course.
Good
And
point.
Kyle will maybe detail that at some point. Maybe he won't. But again, if you're a fan, all of this is moot. Like it doesn't matter about an email, the agent, the money. What matters if you're a fan is, well, who's going to do the job and how are they going to win a Stanley Cup? Like, that hasn't changed. And if Dubas was still here, it would still be the question. All right, Kyle, you've been here for a long time. You haven't won anything. What are you going to do to help them win? And like I find the details fascinating. I'd love to know what was in the financial package. I'd love to know if the word autonomy was in there or if there was a power struggle, too. I wouldn't be shocked if that were the case in some capacity. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a new person on the job, and yet the same expectations are going to apply. And you're going to have a rabid fan base that desperately wants winning here and deserves winning, unlike any other fan base in the league, because it's been so long. And Shanahan, fine, the dust is settled here. You made your move. You go into the long weekend. You better come up with an answer real quick.
Well,
real quick, and it better be the right person.
But
Not
he
that
said-
he doesn't know that, but
Right. The one thing he did say is he'd like a veteran GM. So that rules
Why
out
not,
all of
Jamie?
the-
Why not,
Well,
Jamie?
I agree.
They're smart
Who's that?
hockey
Yeah.
guys, and why not go to a situation where you could say to somebody, a veteran GM or a guy that's been around the block, say, we got some talented pieces around here. What do your eyes tell you about this scenario that needs to change? And
Right.
somebody will just come with the heat and say this, that, and the other.
I
that's
get
it.
that. But that's I think what it did is it stopped the speculation of like, oh, this guy and this guy from this organization and the analytics person from that organization. Like, it's got to be somebody who has been there, done that before. This is a big task at hand in one of the biggest hockey markets in the world. So, like I say, hiring a newbie, I just don't think that's in the cards. And he laid that out there right away.
didn't sound like that was going to be the case. But listen, at the end of the day, it's not going to be an easy job. But you're still starting in a better spot than a lot of other teams in the league. You're starting with a lot of talent. You're starting with a team that goes to the playoffs every year. So you're not starting from scratch. This isn't like 9 years ago when Shanahan showed up. They're in a much better position, but it's a precarious position. There's a lot of moving parts.
Well, this is the window. This is their window.
And you're in a window. So
Yeah.
who's going to step in and get the job done? Mike Johnson in about 25 minutes. Dear Hazy B still to come. John Forslund was in the rink last night. 4 overtimes. It was, 13 seconds away from going to a 5th overtime? What was it like calling a crazy game like that? We'll catch up with John. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
The 2023 Men's IIHF World Hockey Championships are on TSN 1050.
Canada has done it!
Saturday morning, Canada, Switzerland. Coverage begins at 9 on TSN 1050. Champions live here. Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
My bad habits lead to late nights, sending alone conversation.
All right, last night was a wild one down in Carolina. Wild one, man. Goes to 4 overtimes, real close to going to a 5th.
Yep.
That was like one of those games back when I played, when I was the first star, which was every other night. I would look up in the press box. Johnny Forslund would give me the thumbs up and a fist pump, and I'd give him one back, one of my favorite memories.
Is that right?
3 times a week we did that.
3 times a week. All right.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
here
we
he is.
Ask him.
I'm about to do that. He was a longtime voice of the Canes, voice of the Kraken now. You hear him on the NHL on TNT. He was in the building last night calling the game for radio. Here's John Forslund. Can you confirm or deny those details that just laid on the line there, John?
Oh, I can confirm that. That's a big confirmative on that. And I had voting power back in those days. Then they quickly vetoed.
Johnny, hang on a sec. You can't say
near the
that
end.
because now it sounds like you were voting for me when I didn't deserve it.
Exactly. -3
never.
and
Always good for marketing, no matter what. Yeah, no matter what. He could be a -3, and we'd still trot him out there. It was always good.
Yeah. Always a good
Unfortunately,
trooper.
that happened a lot as well.
I never.
Johnny, how was it in there last
what you
night?
guys are talking about.
Right. Of course.
How was it in there last night, Johnny?
It was crazy. You know, you can only imagine, right? I mean, you played in a triple overtime game in the Stanley Cup final in 2002. This was incredible. You know, I've never been part of anything like this, and fans hung around. There's a lot of energy. You know, even as it looked like we were going into 5 overtimes, and you know, both teams back and forth. And the two guys that appeared to get stronger as the game got longer were the two goalies. That was amazing to watch.
Yeah, they were unbelievable. Johnny, did the building almost empty on that goal that was called back? Like, were there people like you? Because it took a while.
That would have been so greasy.
They were running. Noodles, they were running up the stairs. Lomberg scored. They were hugging each other, and the building's almost half empty. And some people got outside and tried to get back in. They weren't allowed back in. But I'd say, you know, 2 a.m, at least 75% filled still, and a lot of people standing the entire time. So it was a really good atmosphere for the Caniacs. It was good.
Yeah, that'd be wild if you try to get back in there. I guess you'd be happy in retrospect if you couldn't get back in. You had to go home, knowing that the Panthers ended up still winning the game, right? Like if Carolina ends up winning, that would be wild. But you mentioned the goalies, and they were both great, but that Sergei Bobrovsky, we saw it up close and personal 5 times last round up here in Toronto.
Man.
That guy is playing at a level unlike anything I've seen in quite some time. He was phenomenal again last night.
He's dialed in. He's reading plays. His footwork seems to be phenomenal. You know, he's attacking when he's supposed to. He's deep in his net when he's supposed to. His flexibility is spot on. He's riding a hot streak. He's just a rallying point for their team right now. And they're writing an incredible story, and they're going to push Carolina hard, and I think the second game will show us a lot. We'll see, you know, if there's any lingering effects on either side with some of the players who were overly taxed in that game, which is just about everybody. But, you know, the Hurricanes have not really had a push yet. So they're facing, you know, some adversity. Here's a 6-game series with the Islanders, and that was okay, and a 5-game series with the Devils, who are a good young team with a ton of skill, but this could be a little bit different. This might test them a little bit in terms of the style of game that Paul Maurice is going to throw out there and how the Hurricanes combat it. So it should be an interesting series.
Johnny, back in our day when Detroit won that triple overtime game, I think everybody kind of understood whoever was going to win that game would have a distinct advantage. Do you think Florida, because you just mentioned how taxing that game was on everybody. Do you think Florida's got a distinct advantage going into Game 2 because they were victorious?
Well, you guys that play would know more than me, but I can tell you, that I remember the day after that game. You know, I remember, you know, going to the building and hearing the guys and just being around both teams. And it wasn't that you guys were down, but you guys were gassed, right? I think that's fair. And I think it was an emotional pull and a physical toll, obviously. And then you had the other side. You had these Detroit Red Wings who had the high payroll, and they had guys like Brett Hull and Robitaille and Larionov on the fourth line. I mean, it was an incredible deep team, and they had new life. And Yzerman was injured, but he was playing through it. He was leading that team, and they had an extra step. They had, and we walked out of the building on that off day thinking like, okay, this could be the turning point, and it was. And they were who they were, and they were enough to get to where they needed to get to win that series. But whoever won that game, I think, had an advantage in terms of what happened next, and that's why I'll be interested to see, you know, what happens tomorrow night.
Johnny, you go through 7 periods with your voice. Remind me who was doing color with you last night.
Jimmy Fox. Jimmy Fox was doing color with me last night. Yeah.
So if you look over at Jimmy Fox is doing a Pete Rose and he'd fallen asleep on the panel, like what are you doing? You're just battling through because obviously.
I can go. Yeah, I can go. I'm okay. I had at least 3 more periods in me last night. I'm okay. After that, I'm done. Yeah, but no, it was. It was a real treat to do that game. It really was, because of the way it was played. You think about the scoring chances and the posts, and Jarvis at the crossbar, Ekblad hit the posts, goalies standing on their heads. 3 power play situations in the overtime. You would think that would ice the game. One side or the other didn't happen. So there's a lot to it, and then the first 3 periods were pretty good too, if we can remember all that.
Right. Yeah, it is difficult to remember the fact that there was actually a regulation time last night with everything that came with them in overtime. It was a wild one. Obviously, you're probably grinding a bit today, but we really appreciate you coming on to detail everything last night, John. And we'll catch up again down the road. Thank you for this.
Okay, boys. Keep up the great work. Thanks for having me.
There's John Forslund of the NHL on TNT, Seattle Kraken play-by-play, longtime voice of the Canes. He knows that building well, right? He's called tons of games down there.
He's one of the good ones.
Great.
He's one of the best.
He should still be in Carolina. I don't even want to get into that, but he's one of the he's one of the great voices of the NHL. I don't know.
Yeah, awesome play-by-play guy. Awesome.
And not a nicer guy in the universe. Not a nicer guy than John Forslund.
Yeah, he's got some great calls, man. And you're right. Like, you look over and Pete Rose is there, or Harry Doyle's buddy in Major League. You get nothing out of the color guy. You're like, man, I got to go.
You actually had one of John Forslund's calls on the 18th fairway when you wanted a ruling. You said, hey, O-Dog, what do you say?
Yeah. And then after I threw a little dart, I think I yelled out, "That's golf, baby." And I rolled in and waited for the concession. I waited for the concession on 18.
Dude, if you hit the 18th green and said, "That's golf, baby," to me, I swear I would have wrapped my 4-iron around your neck.
I'll make sure to save that one for next time. Little dart. That's golf, baby.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You haven't hit a good shot since. So
no, I sure haven't. No, I'm Tom Kim right now. I'm rolling.
We both are. We are both. We gotta go to Hamilton to see Ralphie because we're in trouble.
Big trouble. All right, hour 2 coming up. Mike Johnson on Kyle Dubas being out in Toronto. What are the next pillars to fall, if at all? What does he make of the news of the day? We'll get into it with MJ. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.